Hello everyone. So if you're watching this recording, I just wanted to let you know in full transparency, this recording is happening a little bit more than a month after the event. And if you were at the event, either in person or virtual, you might remember that we had a couple of technical difficulties. So we started a little bit late, and with all the stress of that, I forgot to start the recording on time. So I started the recording on a second speaker. I asked Derrell, who was the first speaker, to record his session, and I'm actually putting this all together. So I'm doing the introduction again. Just want to let everyone know that in advance, this is not a live recording. But also, I wanted to take this opportunity to tell you that I lead a couple of Tableau user groups. Sometimes it doesn't go as planned, and we always make it work. So, if you were thinking about starting a Tableau user group and thinking, oh my God, like what happens if I have a little bit of a hiccup here and there? Well, we make it work. So we're gonna make it work. We're gonna do this recording month after, and we're gonna patch it all together, and we're gonna have it available for anyone that might not have been able to attend the event, or anyone that might want to watch the recording after the event has happened. So that is it. I apologize for not doing this earlier as well. I've been with a bad cold for a couple of weeks. You probably can still tell that I have a little bit lingering there, and my voice is a little bit, it's not the same as usual. But again, we'll make it work. So, this is the New York City and Financial Services Tableau User Group meeting from August 16th. And as you can see, we have the two QR codes here for the Slack pages for both the New York City Tableau User Group and the Financial Services Tableau User Group. So please join us there if you're watching this recording. And let's go to the next slide here. The fantastic leaders of the New York City Tableau User Group here on the screen are Jack Perry, Sifa Mexo, Konstantin Wise, and Queen Surface. And again, that's the New York City Tableau User Group Slack, and some of the things that you can find there are events, job boards, you can get Tableau support, and you have a direct line to the Tableau User Group leaders. So definitely check it out and connect with these amazing people. For the leaders for the Financial Services Tableau User Group is myself, and again Jack, Sifa, and Konstantin. So same, if you want to join us on our Slack, we do have a Slack work page as well, and you can find the same things: events, job board, Tableau support, and a direct line to us. So check it out and connect with us. Now, this is after the fact, but if you were at the event, it was about a month before Dreamforce. So hopefully you got to attend, but if you're watching this recording, this event already happened. So let's go to the next one. The Tableau conference was announced, and you can sign up today, and you can start making plans to attend on April 29th in San Diego. So I hope we get to see you there. And there's a QR code to get more information and sign up. Now, to the speakers. Today, or on August 16th, I should say, we had the amazing Derrell Pate from Wells Fargo. We had Michael Holcomb from Wisdom, and Levy Nell as the speakers for the day. So again, thank you for joining us, and if you're watching the recording, thank you for watching the recording. I'm going to introduce Derrell Pate now.
All right, let's get started. Hi, my name is Derrell Pate, and I'm a analytics manager at Wells Fargo. Today, I'm going to be talking to you about training and upskilling, leveraging public resources to level up analysts. Specifically, how do we leverage things created by the data fam community within our internal company? So a few housekeeping items. We'll go through our agenda, an introduction of who I am, talking about the importance of analytics training, talk about some of the data fam resources that we've compiled, as well as the partnerships that we've made here at Wells Fargo. And then talking about skill assessments. How do we measure the competency of analysts and how that's increasing over time? So a bit about me before we jump into our presentation. My name is Derrell Pate, and I'm an analytics manager with Wells Fargo. I have a finance background with a bachelor's in finance and my MBA in data science and business analytics. I've been in the finance and banking industry for about 10 years, specifically within reporting and analytics. And I'm also the co-lead of the Charlotte Tableau user group. One thing I like to do before we jump into presentations too is talk about the key lessons learned based off my experience as an analyst and a manager. So constraints inspire creativity. Give yourself the freedom to be unconventional, whether it be time or giving yourself a new tool to work with. By constraining something else, you give yourself the freedom to do other things. Balancing user-centered design with design thinking. So valuing user utility over advanced product design. Not getting too bogged down in making the perfect product, but rather focusing on the progression of what the user needs and the value that they receive from what you build. And then finally, make the mundane memorable, aspire for enjoyable. So as we create, we want to use our best practices, but we also want to challenge the status quo of what good product design is. We want to make sure that people can leverage our tools and kind of push the boundaries of what has been before with our product design. Okay, so with that, let's jump into the importance of analyst training. So building a data culture requires data literacy foundation. And I want to share with you an excerpt from the Tableau blueprint, which is a tool that we typically use to stand up data organizations, both internally as well as externally. So organizations realize the full value of their data when everyone across all levels and roles are empowered to make better decisions using data. Building data cultures makes data available in the right form at the right time with the necessary context to drive impact, moving business metrics up. But how do you start a data culture? It's built on the foundation of data literacy. So what we've done is we came together internally to come up with a few metrics or KPIs that we would measure ourselves on as it relates to data literacy. So defining and providing examples of strong visual analytics, providing opportunities for skill development, encouraging purposeful data storytelling, and then also building a data community for collaboration internally. And then now we're going to jump into how did we do that? So the first step is compiling best-in-class examples of data visualization and data storytelling. I'm going to start with a few examples that we're all familiar with, the visual vocabulary created by Andy Kriebel. This is an amazing tool to get started with not only Tableau, but also any other tool that you use. It helps you understand what is the purpose of the visual you're building and gives you tangible example data where you can use that to create your own charts. So we have a version of this internal at Wells Fargo. Real world fake data. So leveraging data sets that mimic what real world data looks like, and also providing an opportunity for analysts to practice with that data, build their own charts. And this was created by Mark Bradburn, who currently works at Tableau. Also, we have an internal conference where we've done a tag team session with Tableau, where we talked about the best practices of visual analytics. So I highly encourage you to reach out to your Tableau success manager if you want to do something similar to that. And then finally, data storytelling examples. How can you make sure that your message is meaningful and you're communicating your point effectively? One of the best sources of this that I typically like to use is Tableau Conference from 2019. Most of the videos are posted on YouTube, and here I've linked one of my favorite sessions from Adam Cook, a practical guide to guided analytics. How do you make sure that as someone works their way through your dashboard, that you're guiding them through naturally? A few points about all of the resources that I've shared with you today. We've taken the best practices provided by the community, and we've customized them with our own brands and themes. We've taken what works for us, and we've customized it and made it bespoke to what will work internally for Wells Fargo. And then finally, we've created opportunities for practitioners as well as the creators of some of these tools to present tailored sessions internally. So having speakers from Tableau like Mark Bradburn come, partnering with Information Lab and having them do sessions internally is a great way to get visual practitioners internally to talk to your folks. And next, I want to talk about how we've used real-world fake data, as well as some of the other data that we've leveraged from public sources. So again, this data is fictional data from the real-world fake data. However, we are using our custom spin on it, our internal color palette. So does call center dashboard, where are customers and how can they reach us with this fake data? I want to highlight the data story that we're telling here. The top 3 cities are consistently Washington, Houston, and New York City. And a follow-up question that we could ask by this is how can this inform our plans for expansion? And typically when you're presenting, if you present in this kind of manner, this opens up a lot of dialogue to which you can further inform and explore the data set for future data analysis based off of what your business partners say. And then the next piece is we have our call center, chatbot, email, and web. So typically, how are people getting in contact with us? Our top contact method happens to be call center. If we wanted to drive additional traffic to chatbot, what are some methods that we could do so to do that? And then the next thing that we can do is once we come up with a plan, we can measure the plan's effectiveness using data. Do we see chatbot volume picking up over time in terms of percentage or actual volume? So this is a really great way to use data to create metrics to measure effectiveness of new programs and new initiatives. And next, I want to show you an analytics workshop. So as I spoke earlier, we use best-in-class visual analytics internally. We also partner with the data fam to take some of the things like IronViz and make sure that we have a version of that internal to Wells Fargo as well. But the other thing that we do is workshops. How do we teach our new analysts? And I'm going to pretend like this, all of you are new analysts and you get to kind of participate in one of the examples that we may show. And this example is going to be based off the same data set, but it's going to show you how to create a sparkline chart. So again, with this data set, we have our GIF that's currently playing on the same data. The data is available for download. So if you want to follow along with this at a later time, you definitely can. I've put the 2 calculations that I use, the min calls received, as well as the max calls received at the bottom. And these will essentially represent the dots. So the minimum dot, as well as the maximum dot. The line actually represents the number of calls over time. And these are essentially 2 charts that are laid on top of each other. So as we're working our way through, we're changing our colors to make it consistent with our color palette. And after we change our colors aesthetically, if that looks good to us, we're going to start to work with the line. We want to change the line color, make it a bit larger, and then get rid of some of the superfluous things that we don't need, like some of the extra axis as well as the header if we don't need it. And then finally, once that's complete, we'll do some minor formatting for the background. And there we've created a spark line. So this is a great way to get started with different chart types, combining charts together. And of course, I put at the bottom, you can leverage any color palette that's available to you. So you can customize this for your own needs. So the next piece, talking about compiling best-in-class data visualization examples. Some of the things that we do internally that we've also learned and studied externally is visualization blog posts. How do we create the different charts that we make? So similar to the Sparkline example, maybe we would create a blog post of how to create it. What are the pros and the cons of that chart type? And what are some of the tangible examples that you can use with a Sparkline? So leveraging interesting data sets. The 2 examples that I have here are examples of data sets that were made available publicly and creations that we've put onto Tableau Public. So the first example is Battle of the Banks. This was from 2021, where I was a participant for Wells Fargo. There are companies, there are banks across the industry that participate in this, and I was lucky enough to place top 10. The data set for that particular year was for climate strategy. So this was a great way to work with data that I don't typically work with and play with some chart types that may be not the best for visual for business standards, but also stretch my visual analytics muscle. So being able to play with different color palettes, being able to play with different charts that I don't typically use in my day-to-day, this was a great example of being able to do that. And then another data example, during the pandemic, I have a mentee who leveraged their Netflix data to create a chart. Since I'm the Charlotte Tableau user group lead, she's done a presentation on this if you want to check it out around Netflix data. But this was great because we did this during the pandemic. As you can see, with March of 2020, there's a huge spike in watch history. And I'm sure this is consistent across the board for anyone who has Netflix, just because this is when the pandemic started. So this is another great way to use data to relate to others, as well as show the impact of real life decisions on our data. The next piece is data viz challenges. So talking about Battle of the Banks, we also have something very similar internally where we allow analysts across the bank to stretch their visual prowess and use their visual analytic skills to compete and show what they've learned to other groups. And then also tailored learning courses. So creating a sample data set, having office hours and checkpoints where we can have different analysts learn different tools, specifically Tableau, as well as some of the other tools that we leverage here. So within this tailored learning courses, we're starting to practice with interns currently. So we're expanding our participant network to give exposure to analytical practitioners, basically having interns come in and learning from the existing analysts that we have, giving the opportunity to prep, blend, transform, and analyze mock data sets, collaboration with other interns in their program, which is great. And then also at the end, we have a capstone project, which allows them to showcase their analytical talents, whether that be building a dashboard or doing a presentation. There are a number of ways you can do capstone projects. So for module 1, we talk about how do we prep and blend data together. Module 2 will leverage some kind of Power BI or some kind of BI tool, just like Tableau or Power BI. And then module 3 focuses on data storytelling. So tool agnostic, how do you deliver your message and make sure that your point is getting across? And then finally, a cumulative example of putting everything together in the capstone project. So our SMEs, which are our analysts who have been working here for a while and also use these tools every day, work with the participants in the program to teach, challenge, grade, and refine any analytical products that they create. So whether that be dashboard reviews or helping them create their own calculations, this is a great way for them to learn from practitioners within the program and become better analysts. And the next piece, this is the next phase of our journey, is skills assessment. So how do we measure their journey? Assessing upskilling. So measure the analyst's skill for development needs. Maybe you have someone who's really strong in SQL, but they need work in Tableau. How do you make some kind of assessment for that and show the progression over time? We're working on that right now internally. And in fact, there is a great example on Tableau Public by Fee Gordon, which talks about how to build this up in another analytics tool, but it can be refined and opened up to other tools. I encourage you guys to check that out. Provide opportunities to advance in learning and contributing to the analytics community. So making your newer analysts learn a little bit more about the tools that you leverage every day, and then giving them opportunities to either write a blog post or do a presentation, something that can increase their knowledge of the tool, as well as giving them opportunities to leverage it. And then finally, we want to make it interactive with features like points and leaderboards. So we want to show people's progression, whether they're progressing from a beginner to intermediate or someone who's going from intermediate to almost advanced. We want to be able to provide tangible opportunities for them to do so, whether that be leading a new session and teaching about a different tool, or creating a blog post that helps other people leverage the tool on a day-to-day basis. All right, and then I put my LinkedIn below if you want to get in contact with me or talk a little bit more about Tableau. Thank you for letting me present today.
Process of changing from one state. Being recorded. The process of changing from one state to another state, really in the context of my career, customer success, as well as the evolving field of data and analytics. what I want you to think about is, as we're going through this discussion, I want you to think about the own transitions that are going on in your lives, your personal lives, your business lives. And then what you think about, what are the catalysts that need to happen to actually make that transition happen? It could be you, or it might be the person sitting next to you. But that's what I want you to kind of think about as we're talking about this. Let's see, there we go. That's not what I wanted, sorry. You know, I'm not a big fan of Zoom, sorry. Stop sharing. Let's try this again. Where did everything go? All right, let's try this again. All right, there we go. All right, one more time. All right, so imagine you're standing like on the edge of one season going into another. My daughter loves skiing. So for us, autumn into winter is really what we look for. And we get that cold breeze, the snow coming in, the dry air, and it's really just kind of refreshing. This is a transition. It's an essential part of life. It's an essential part of business. It's an essential part of culture, and so many more things that we do. And transitions, although natural and essential, they often come with a mix of excitement and fear at the same time, right? Because we're drawn to these new possibilities, but at the same time, we're afraid of the obstacles and what's to come all at the same time. And we're held back by that uncertainty, whether that's a new career path, whether it's a breaking new technology, whether it's organizational change, whatever it is. You tend to get this paradox of transition in this dual nature of the opportunity, but the anxiety. And how we navigate this is a really delicate balance that shapes not only our individual experiences, but our collective experiences. And so I'm going to start with a few of my own transitions. I'm going to start with when I started going off to school, because that's really the beginning of my professional career. I started off at Memphis State University. I guess you can't quite see all that. Memphis State University, which is known as Tiger High, with the altruistic vision of being a child psychologist or working with children. But that altruism quickly gave way to the fact that I was independent and I was paying for my own school. And so I decided to make a change because I had to pay the bills. And so I ended up moving to Cleveland, Ohio, and going to Cleveland State University. Big transition. Memphis State, warm climate. Cleveland, Ohio, burning river city. It got cold in the winter. There's one year it was 35 below with the wind chill. And a new career at this point in finance. So pretty big transition. I did an internship at IBM while I was at Cleveland State University. So I moved to New York and worked in White Plains, New York, on an accounting team where I taught myself SQL. And I rewrote all the load processes for the reconciliations and improved them by like 50%. Right? Why am I telling you this? Because you're beginning to see that there's this element of data and analytics that is going to continue to evolve in my career. I spent there a year, and then I went back to Cleveland State University, and I got my degree in finance, my undergrad degree in finance. And then I went back to New York, and I started to work again for IBM, this time in their customer financing organization as a business analyst writing leasing methodologies for their global leasing business. So again, really this esoteric algorithm that they use I could never use anywhere else again, but I would literally get my calculator and I'd be punching on it to test whatever I've written in code. From there, I went to the NASDAQ stock market as controller for their strategic initiatives. And this is at the time when the market was at a high and we're pursuing trading with the sun. And so I had a joint venture software company in India that I managed the finances for. I worked with NASDAQ Global in Switzerland. I did the NASDAQ Life joint venture in Chicago. Am I leaving out Japan? So it was a very global role in nature. I had a bunch of expense centers as well, but it was really about moving this business forward. After 9/11, I took a break and went to Hawaii and lived for a year and learned how to surf. That was my way of kind of recalibrating my life and coming back. When I came back, I did some consulting for a small firm. I did work at UBS on their trading floor. I did some work for Julius Baer, some hedge funds and other various financial organizations. I made my way to Citibank, where I started to go back to school. And so I went to school at nights and on weekends. And I got my degree of finance from Baruch Zicklin School of Business here in the city in 9 months. So while working full-time again, doing this on weekends at nights. Getting my degree, my master's degree, opened up a lot of different doors for me. One of those doors was at Bloomberg, where I joined on one of their special projects teams, doing all kinds of really interesting work across Bloomberg. So I think mergers and acquisitions, land deals. My biggest deal was a $2 billion land deal in the UK, operational analysis. All I did was eat, sleep, and drink data. I mean, that was it. I had Excel spreadsheets that would get up and make your bed in the morning if you wanted. I mean, that is essentially what you're doing in that type of a role, is you're crunching tremendous amounts of data to get to an answer somebody can make a decision on. It was a tremendous amount of fun, except for there's this 1 7-day period where I literally slept 1 to 2 hours a night on a big deal. That was probably a low point. I eventually moved into a finance organization. And it was in 2009 that I had an experience that was going to change the course of my career. I just didn't know it yet. So I was the CFO team lead for the trading solutions business, and I was interviewing a candidate, and she said to us, describing a problem I had, and she said to me, she goes, "Have you heard of Tableau?" I said, "Nope, I haven't." Now, I didn't hire that candidate. I probably should have. And if she's out there, thank you very much. Because I went back and I found out what Tableau was. And I was designing a revenue reporting, a projection system, forecasting database, if you will. And so I was pulling a bunch of different data sets into Microsoft Access database, and I layered Tableau on top of it to do all my reporting. And I took Tableau everywhere I went in my career. Literally everywhere. And as my career evolved, I took Tableau with me. So I became CFO for President's Office and Chairman's offices. I had a number of different startups underneath me at that time, as well as some pretty big chunky expense areas. So if you link back, all of the legal business for Bloomberg was under my areas, and a bunch of others. And so I was making recommendations to, obviously, the chairman and the president about what to do with acquisitions and startups and what we're going to do. And then in 2013, I moved to DC. I got an offer to be CFO for a fledgling business that we had named Bloomberg Government. And back then, House of Cards was really popular. And so, as you can imagine, we watched a lot of House of Cards in DC. And things went well. We grew the business. I took Tableau there as well. We rolled it out internally for reporting, and we rolled it out externally for reporting as well. We ended up using it for our economists who were doing research on the federal contracting market. It took them 2 sprints, which is about 4 weeks, to get their research out. I gave them Tableau, I trained them up, and it went from 4 weeks to 2 days. So we went from being last in the market to being very first in the market. And that was great. And then in 2015, I had another big transition, and that was a transition to fatherhood. My wife and I had a little girl named Mika Carolina that we welcomed into the world. And I started thinking about, well, how do I get back to New York? I still lived in New York, an apartment here, right? But I was only here on the weekends, and that wasn't really great as a father figure. So 6 months later, I ended up back in New York. And I'm bored. And I'm just like, I don't know what to do next. But it's got to be something different. I have 20 years now plus in executive positions in finance and financial services. And I didn't want to do it anymore. And so I started thinking about, what is my next transition? What is that catalyst for me? And all of a sudden it occurred to me that seed back in 2009 that was planted about Tableau and where I'd taken it at that point, it had grown up. And so now I started to think about it. Well, I don't love finance. I don't love financial services. Although if you work in financial services, you can work anywhere. But I do love data and analytics. And I do love rolling that out, scale, and helping people make decisions. And as a CFO, data and analytics is pretty much what you exist. That's how you make decisions. And so I knew what I need to do. So I leveraged my network. in Tableau, and I joined Tableau as a customer success manager. You guessed it, focused on the financial services industry. What? But I knew it so well, it was a natural fit. I knew the problems, I could go in and help people out. A brief pause here. Building a network, particularly in the data fam, is so incredibly important because it's going to pay dividends. We all love data and analytics. We're so passionate about it. And these are the people that are going to help you out when you're looking to make a transition in your life. I'll give you an example. Francis de Jonquière, who I worked with at Bloomberg Government, was a business analyst. He was amazing at Tableau. Francis was thinking about transition in his life. He called me up and he said, will you give me a reference? Absolutely, Francis, I'll give you a reference. He came to work for Tableau. And then he ended up on my team. And he was amazing. He was a very high performer. He was so much fun to work with. It wasn't even like a manager relationship. It was more like a collaborative relationship. And then Francis came to me one day and he said, I want to make a transition. I said, oh, what do you want to do? He goes, well, I grew up in Argentina, but my family is from Belgium. All right. He lives in DC. I want to go to Europe. Okay. You know what, Francis, you're a rock star. We'll get you to Europe. And so then I was able to help Francis get from DC to Europe, where he is today, still working for Tableau, except, right, it's August right now. He should be moving to Italy with his wife, still working for Tableau. And so I tell you that story because there's nothing like the data fam community. And you should build those connections, just like Francis and how he leveraged me. But back to my story. So radical change, finance executive, customer success manager. I had no idea what a customer success manager is or was or what they did. And today it's very different than when I started as a customer success manager. The industry is evolving and changing. And so if you think about customer success, where it is today, given the market and what's going on, people are very focused on a digital model that is free. And they're focused at a fee service-based model. Why is that? Because attribution is hard. How do you demonstrate that you've grown the business as a customer success manager through all these wonderful programs that you were talking about over there? Education, adoption. How do you do that? Attribution is really hard. And so companies are now moving, and your customer success organizations get big, by the way, and then they get expensive, by the way. And so people are moving to a fee-based model so that a customer success manager becomes an orchestrator for you. They're going to pull in that technical account manager. They're going to arrange the training for you. They're going to get professional services to do their job. And they become your single focus or fee to deliver what you need to be successful. Despite the changing nature of success, I was very successful in success. And it was largely because I really was passionate about data and analytics. I knew how to use Tableau, and I wanted to help organizations scale analytics, and I'd already done that. So it was win-win. My colleagues, my crews, you saw that. The companies I worked with saw that. Management saw that. And so I ended up building out their entire customer success financial services vertical. Why am I telling you all this? I'm telling you all this because when I look at my life and my career, it's all about transition from one state to another state. And for whatever reason, despite the fact that we're changing every day, you're getting older every day, you're getting older every day. You might not be getting older, I don't know. We're going to eat, we get new favorite restaurants, we go on vacations in new places that we never tried before. Despite all of these things that are going on all the time, our organizations that we work for have a terrible time trying to change. And that's one of the fundamental problems that organizations are missing. And as change takes place, fundamental steps need to happen in lockstep with this. And so I'm going to use the democratization of analytics as an example around this. It's not the only example, but it's an easy one because I was involved in it. So the idea of going from analytics with end users from a tightly controlled model posed a series of significant challenges for a lot of organizations. There was no framework on how to do that, right? And so a team of us came up with Tableau Blueprint and data culture, because we're trying to inspire organizations to really, truly change. And we need to give them a way to think about how to actually do that. It's an important piece of change management and transitioning. And this helped a lot, but it tended to be a ground up, not top down. Why do you think that was? Does anybody want to give it a guess? People what?
Sat with the people that are passionate about data.
It did. It sat with the people that are passionate about data. Certainly did. But why didn't the messaging reach higher? We weren't speaking the language of executives. And so it tended to be ground up and sat with the people that love data because we were speaking to them in their languages. Executives like concepts, right? They like investments and they like to know what they get for it. I'm going to sell you this thing, Mike Cruz, and it's going to increase your revenue by 30%. Oh, well, that's great. I want to buy it, right? And that's the language that executives think of in terms of the metrics that are impacting them and their compensation and their organizations. So it tends to be retention, that tends to be product velocity, that tends to be revenue, that could be something on their balance sheet where they have risks for reserved for risks on their balance sheet. There's a lot of different ways, but that's why it didn't resonate. And so we partnered with IDC to conduct a study on how data culture fuels business value in data-driven organizations. And out of that came this concept of data maturity. Now, this is a step forward in the right direction. Now we're going to start talking to executives about how you get from one maturity to another maturity. And we partnered with a Harvard Harvard professor to come up with this interactive executive workshop on this company named Motivo. Now, I've done this presentation several times on Motivo. Some of you might have seen it at a conference a couple of years ago. Motivo designed fictional a road overlay that allowed electric vehicles to naturally charge as you were driving along the road, right? Wouldn't that be awesome? And we want executives to play the role of the CDO, of the new CDO, right? Now, new CDOs, we know they make it about 18 months or so, depending on how successful they are. So there's a bias for them to move quickly. And we led them through a series of interviews with other executives at the organization. So think like support, think like the head of sales. And we posed challenges to them, obstacles. And each organization had a different obstacle. And they had to make decisions on how to move the whole organizational forward and present that as a plan, right? And so we gave them those individual sort of obstacles that they had. And what we wanted for them to see out of this is that there's a range of short-term and long-term investments that you make. And so now we're starting to speak their language, investments that have outcomes, right? And so we're trying to shift the conversation with them, help them start to think about these actions that need to take place. And we also want them to understand there's no leapfrogging to the end. You don't go from data aware to data leading overnight. There's sequential steps that need to be made across a whole range of investments to actually get where we're trying to grow, to build that foundation. And when I say investments, actually mean in people, product, and process. Or people, process, and product, right? And so you have to develop and grow your people, and you have to help them adapt to this changing environment. So you need to skill them up to that. Your processes have to change. You're going to invest in new technologies that are coming out, and those are going to have new roles and new functions, like ChatGPT, right? That's a new technology that's going to come out. And of course, how you make your decisions are going to change as well. So you don't go from making no decisions based on data to the next day making all your decisions on based on data. It's kind of hard to do. It's not realistic. So short-term investments, you hire a consulting firm like your firm over here, Toby Sharp Information Labs, to increase the velocity of a project. Maybe it's in support because you want to reduce the retention. That speaks the executive's, increase the retention. That speaks the executive's language. But you also want to make long-term investments like you were talking about, Derrell, which is how do you invest into people so that you can grow those skills. Now you can take on those projects by yourself, and that reduces the expense of having a Tableau environment. Again, I'm speaking in the executive's language. And then the processes are going to change, right? Like the move to the decentralized analytics model that sits between IT and the business, and so new roles come up. You need a data artisan, or that data artisan is going to be the bridge between IT and the business because they're going to work on the data ops and the analytics ops, right? Most organizations still don't have data artisans. But this is how we need to tell them to make these investments to improve their bottom lines and their top lines. And as those processes change, other organizations and functions are going to rise to support them. So DevOps, data ops, ML ops, analytics ops, all these ops are now buzzwords that people need to invest in. Your organizations need to invest in them. They may or may not know that because we know that organizations have a hard time with change. But that's what they need to do to remain competitive. So let's dig into one of these. Let's dig into analytics ops, because this is something I know pretty well at this point, because it's what we do at Wisdom. According to Ventana Research, I'm going to read this to you. It's expected that by 2024, 1/3 of organizations will adopt an analytic operations approach similar to and integrated with their data operations processes to enhance responsiveness and agility. It's a lot of big words. But if 1/3 of the organizations are going to be out there doing that, that's got to be pretty important. So what is analytics ops? It's about anticipating change and establishing processes to deal with that change, preferably in an automated way. That's important. We're going to come back to that in a minute. Where possible. So for example, the process of that we all know in the Tableau world is you're going from dev to test to production, but you want to do that in an automated way. And right now it's a very disjointed approach between the data ops organization and the analytics ops, and very few have analytics ops, and there are very few vendors and organizations addressing it. When I go to talk to somebody in data ops, they put their hand up and they're like, no, we have our data governors over here. I'm like, it doesn't stop there. It doesn't stop there. And why doesn't it stop there? Because most organizations lag way behind. I was with a big domestic bank a few weeks ago. So a few weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago. And I was talking to the team of analysts that create, this is a big domestic bank. It's a team of analysts that create dashboards for the CEO to make decisions off of every day. That get presented to the board. They said, we don't have time. We're 5 analysts. We do monthly releases. And what we do is we point and we click, we check in our calculator, and we just spot check. And then they got vulnerable. They said, we found some errors the other day. We found an error in production with a calculation. We don't know how it got there. We don't know who did it. We don't know why. But the syntax of that calculation did not meet their best practices. It actually ended with a 1, and they knew that was not them. Okay, that's bad. And then they found another area. There was a calculation difference between, both calculations were correct, but they were done differently across the analysis. And so now your data doesn't match up. Now, fortunately, the one was not done the way it should have been done, was only for like a small 5% of their business, so nobody ever noticed it. But these are the things that are happening. These are things that are happening to you and your users and your companies because nobody's investing in the analytics ops process to try to help automate these things so that we can actually get to what's next, right? Poor data quality destroys business value. Gartner estimates about $10 million a year, 10 to 11 million bucks a year is spent on poor data quality. But we know the adage, if you're standing on a frozen lake and your hair's on fire, on average you're warm, right? Not great. This can get much more expensive. And here's a great example. I've got tons of examples of these, but this one is relatively recent, 2020. I'm going to read this to you. The OCC assessed a $400 million fine against Citibank for its, quote, long-standing failure to establish effective risk management and data governance programs and internal controls, end quote. Wow. 400 bucks, completely no governance. And the risks and penalties are going to get higher as businesses get more complex, as we start to evolve our analytics models and how we engage with analytics. And so what's next with data and analytics? Well, it's a good thing you asked. You don't have to go very far with the future holds. So here, I went to Amazon. I started searching for Pokemon cards. And my daughter's going to turn 8 this year in October 23rd. We love to play Pokemon, and not just like trading cards. We actually do the trading battle part, the trading card game, and it's a tremendous amount of fun. And so I thought I would go and see if I could find some cards to buy, right? And on the left-hand side, you can see data presented to me in my workflow and my purchasing workflow. So I can filter by book series or collection or character or price, a lot of stuff right there in my workflow. And so I choose a pack of cards. I'm looking at a 50-lot assorted pack of cards with guaranteed V Pokemon. Does anybody in here play Pokemon, or is it just me? Okay, there's nobody understands the V Pokemon. All right, I'll explain it to you after this. I see there's like 2,000 reviews, 1,800 answered questions, 4.3 out of 5 stars. That's pretty good. I can even click and get a Viz in Viz, which is also clickable. And I can see that 69% are 5-star. I'm really interested in the 9% that are the 1-star. And so I can click through to the next screen where I can see I can begin to drill down further and get to that data that I need to make a good purchasing decision, right? But I can see a bunch of them are fake. There are a lot of duplicates in there. Yuck. I don't know. Does this sound too good to be true for 625? Yeah, I think it is. So I didn't buy the Pokemon cards. Point here is that data leading companies are moving to having analytics ingested in their workflows like this because it's seamless. And to do that, though, you need an analytics operating model that's automated to allow you to engage that data and analytics in a way that's trusted and secure, that you know that you can then go make a decision based on that data and analytics. But risk and value are the opposite sides of this same coin. In most cases, that's not the way that data analytics leaders are thinking about it. According to Gartner, you're going to love this one, data and analytics leaders typically have limited experience with risk practices or frameworks and engage risk management and security teams very late in their initiatives. And that's, my friends, why we have these two problem states that continue to be pervasive. The one on the left, okay, that's knowable. It's annoying, but it's knowable, right? My extract is broke, fine, you can go fix it. The one on the right, that's not knowable. That's the 400 million problem that Citibank had because they didn't realize that their data was wrong and they were reporting it incorrectly. So if you want to deliver that sustainable business value and you want to mitigate risk, you have to adopt an analytics risk management framework as part of that data and analytics operating model, which is analytics ops. And you have to integrate and automate that risk management framework within your existing organizational risk and control environment. We didn't have time for it today, but a lot of times when I do this with customers, I share problems I've had in my career, little ugly stories about data being wrong. And I ask the people that I'm talking to share their stories, just like that big domestic bank I was talking about earlier. Why do I do this? I do this because the only way to get data and analytics leaders and executives caring about this is to share these stories with them and how these stories are going to impact them. We have to make them care. And the only way we do that is we get vulnerable and we collect some stories and we make them care. And so that's why I ask people, because I'm trying to get them to care. And I would ask you to do the same thing within your organizations. If you want to be that catalyst for change, you have to do something. It just doesn't happen by you sitting by and watching it. So if you want to create change, if you want to move your organizations forward, start collecting stories. Start figuring out where the dead bodies, proverbial dead bodies, are hidden. Start creating your stories and your talk tracks in a way that executives will go, oh, I get that. That's impacting my revenue. We should do something about that. Or that's going to impact my career. Because data and analytics leaders typically have limited experience with risk processes or frameworks. And so that's why I joined Wisdom from Tableau Salesforce, was really to help analytics leaders understand where the risks were, tell them those stories, and help them transition from the models they are to the models that are coming up that they need to be focused on. Thanks for your time, everybody. I hope that was fun for you.
Okay, well, thank you guys in person. We're gonna hear from Libby. She's gonna be sharing about Tableau Prep in a few minutes.
Hi, yes, let me get it set up really quick here. Can everybody see my screen? Okay, cool. I'm gonna go ahead and get started. I actually don't know how much time I have, so someone feel free to give me a time check or let me know if I'm running over. But hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be joining you virtually today. My name is Libby, and I'm on the product team for Tableau Prep. And this is my first New York City tug. And I'm going to be talking about some new features in Tableau Prep today. So starting out with a little bit of background about me, like I mentioned, I'm on the product team for Prep. I am originally from Seattle, Washington, but I moved to New York about a year ago. I joined Tableau in Seattle as an intern, actually. It was during COVID, and now it's been about 2 years as a full-time employee. And my favorite fun fact is that I have a 2-year-old French bulldog named Toro, who you can see in the bottom right-hand corner, who's basically my child. And if you were at Tableau Conference 2023 this year, I had the opportunity and privilege to be one of the Devs on Stage speakers. So if you remember the Tableau prep portion and the meatball, that was me. And then also Toro was featured in that as well. So really excited for TC 2024 in San Diego. Vegas is fun, but it'll be nice to have somewhere new. And yeah, that's a bit about me. So before I get into anything, legally I have to show you this. Essentially, Salesforce is a publicly traded company. Please make all purchasing decisions based off what is currently in the market. Today, I'm going to be showing you some features that are not in a release version of Prep yet, but I'm excited to show you. Just make sure you're making your purchasing decisions based on what's already out there. So first, I really wanted to talk about some of the recent improvements that we've made to the product in the past year. So I've listed all of the releases so far in 2023 and the features respectively that we've released in Prep. And one thing which I heard as a theme in the other two presentations today is that the Tableau community really is such a unique and powerful thing. And I've gone ahead and marked some of the features here that we've released that began as a community idea, whether that's through a Tableau visionary or members on the idea forum or in the forums, which I think is really awesome because without your support and involvement, we wouldn't have these amazing features and continue to make the product better. So quickly just going over the two releases that we've released so far. 23.1, we released generate row number for Excel and CSV, some input step improvements, as well as additional connectors via the Tableau Exchange Gallery. So generate row number was a community idea. I believe it was either Jonathan Drummy or actually, I believe it was Jonathan Drummy who originally posted the idea. And the idea behind it is customers wanted some way to maintain the original sort order of their data as it exists in text files today. And that can be useful for when you're trying to validate certain transformations in Prep or when you're creating calculations that require you to give a field to order by, which is useful when I talk about multi-row calculations later. We also saw input step improvements, like I mentioned. So for those who aren't familiar with some of the performance best practices, if you remove as many fields as possible on the input step, that helps Tableau Prep bring in less data as you are authoring your flow, and so you'll have a more responsive and quick experience. So we made some changes to the input step to make it easier to bulk select a large amount of fields at the input step to really incentivize a lot of those folks who have, maybe hundreds of fields to do Control A and just select 3 of them or 4 of them that are relevant. And lastly, the connectors with the Tableau Exchange Gallery is pretty self-explanatory. Those were available in Tableau Desktop, and we just made them available in Prep, so more connectivity options. And then in 23.2, this was a really exciting release for us. We saw multi-row calculations, timestamp flow output, as well as connect to Amazon S3 and Google Analytics. So multi-row calculations was also a major community requested idea. You can think of multi-row calcs as fairly similar to table calculations in Tableau Desktop. Specifically, we enabled customers to create moving calculations, so like a moving average, percent difference from and difference from in Prep. So you can actually materialize those calculations in your published data source or in your whatever output data type you want, instead of having to deal with the intricacies of table calcs in Tableau Desktop. So for those who are familiar, as you're interacting with a viz or you're filtering out data, table calcs are always the thing that are calculated last. So you have to be kind of cognizant of that as you're interacting with the data. And if you're not careful, it can lead to confusing results. So that was multi-row calculations. For timestamp flow output, this was also a community requested idea that was kind of a spin-off of parameters in Tableau Prep. But we have a lot of customers who are automating their prep flows, running them daily, monthly, quarterly, and they want some way to create distinguishable outputs. So let's say you're outputting a new file to a shared file drive every day, or you're creating a published data source that contains each quarter's worth of data. This allows you to create a timestamp for that flow output name. And anytime that the flow runs, it will automatically update with either yeah, we have things like the date, the time, quarter, week, etc. So was also a community idea. And the connectivity options, again, self-explanatory, but these are pretty exciting. Always great to connect to new types of data. So those are the past 2 releases. The features that I'm going to be talking about today or demoing today are coming soon in 2023.3, which is fill down and running calculations, set header and data start row for CSV and text files, and then a new sampling algorithm called stratified sampling. So you can think of the first bullet point as kind of an extension of multi-row calculations. Actually, I think when we released multi-row calcs, the first part, I had a lot of folks trying to ask me, hey, I want to try and do this thing with multi-row calcs. I want to fill down, I want to do a running calc, and you can't do it today, but we definitely are planning to implement it, and it will be in the product soon. So I'm going to show you that today, as well as set header and data start row. This was one of the features that I showcased at TC, but again, I think the demo will tell the story there. And lastly, the stratified sampling algorithm, I think, is also best shown through the demo. And we have a Tableau release navigator for folks who want to look at releases in the past and know, like, hey, what version am I on? What new features are in the versions that I should upgrade to? So feel free to check that out. And if there's no questions and I'm good on time, I'm going to hop to the demo. I can't see everyone, so I'm just going to assume. Unless, okay, I'm seeing nodding. Awesome. Cool. So hopping into Tableau Prep, I've connected to a couple different data sources that I think exemplify each of the features. So I'm just going to start off with the fill down feature that I mentioned at the very start. So I'm going to go ahead and go to a clean step just so everyone can see the shape of the data and see the fields. Wait a second for this to load. I had it open for a while. So thank you to the Information Lab. I believe this is a Prep and Data Challenge data set. But you can see here that I have store sales data. So I have information like the specific store, as well as the sales target for those stores and the store manager. And then I just have a generic row ID as well. So you take a first look. I mean, the thing that we love about Prep is the profile pane immediately tells me I have 67% of my rows are null. So I should probably handle those. And I can see down here in the data grid view that these nulls are actually strategically placed. So as a human, I can see this tab. We kind of call this cross tab or tabula kind of format is very human readable. I know that Jenny actually is the store manager for these 3 stores. Tom is for these 4, and then Jonathan for these 2. But Tableau, if I were to visualize this in Tableau, and if I wanted to like filter on store manager or drag that into my measures and dimensions, it wouldn't know that Jenny is the manager of this store or of Norwich. So what I ideally want to do is make sure that all of these rows are associated with the correct store manager. And so that's where fill down comes in. It's a concept that I think a lot of folks are familiar with in Excel, because that's what it's called. So yeah, today I'm going to show you how to achieve that. So just like you would with any calculated field, you can go to the More Options menu, and you have this Create Calculated Field option. So we have our existing options to create fixed LODs, some of the multi-row calc options, and you'll see this new choice to fill down. So I'm going to go ahead and select that, and it will open up a hopefully familiar to some of you user interface, which helps you build the calculation essentially with clicks instead of having to write anything in the expression editor. And I can see right away that the calculation editor is saying I need to select a field to order by. And I do have a row ID, which is great. But in the case that I don't have a row ID, that's where source row number would come into handy. I could go back to the input step and enable that, which I'll show you in a second. But let's go ahead and just say I want to order my data set by row ID. So it took a second just to pause because a lot of things just happened. So you can see in this right-hand side that Tableau Prep is actually showing me a preview of the results that I just created. So the changed rows have been bolded, and it's really small over here, but in the scroll bar, I actually have blue highlights that tells me when a new distinct value is there. So if I had a really long table, I could validate each of these results by scrolling through to each blue marker. And now I can see in the data grid and above, that each of the rows is now associated with the correct store manager. So something that would have taken me multiple steps and pretty confusing today, if you've ever tried it in a prep and data challenge, now can just happen really quickly with a visual calc. So really excited about this one. Had a lot of folks asking about this on community forums. Yeah. Next, I'm going to talk about running calc as well, which is another type of multi-row calculation. You can think of it in a way. And so again, I think a common example for running calcs is a running sum of sales. So if you want to materialize that in your data set instead of doing it as a table calc, let's say you're working with a really big data set and your dashboards are loading really slow and you want to create a published data source that has all of that preloaded. Again, similarly to the other experience, you would go and create a calculated field and you see a new choice to create a running calc. Going to go ahead and click that. And again, this visual calculation editor shows up and I have to choose a field to order by. So in this case, because I'm creating a running sum of sales over time, it makes sense that because I have a date field that I'd want to order it in chronological order of date. Tableau Prep automatically does it in ascending order or like chronological order, but I could change that if I wanted by just clicking a button. So as I mentioned, what's fantastic about this interface is that it's really visual. So I can see that I have the choice to choose between a running sum or a running average. In this case, I wanted to do running sum of sales. And this interface is actually interactive. So as I click on the results in the calculation, notice that the left-hand side is updating. So that tells me that this 304 number is actually the sum of these 4 values that I'm seeing in the preview, which I think what's fantastic about Tableau Prep is it makes it a really learnable tool. So things that are kind of confusing and maybe in Tableau Desktop or just confusing concepts in general are more easily understood in this scenario. And I also have the option to group by or partition my table. So for example, if I wanted to find the running sum of sales per store, you can go ahead and add that as my group by. And now you can see kind of more clearly those blue marks, but let's say these are all the running sums for this specific store. If I wanted to scroll down to a different store, I went to that blue marker and now I can see that, oh, for the Soho store, now we're generating a new running sum. So you can see that partition there, again, respected by the annotations. So yeah, really excited about these new features, extensions to multi-row calcs that I think will be really valuable. I think a prep and data challenge just came out to do running sums today in prep without this feature. So maybe try that out so you can feel how painful it is and then try it with this once this comes out. And then for power users, you can also write these expressions in the expression editor directly if you don't want to use the visual interface. But yeah, so those are those 2 features. The next one that I want to talk about is set header and start row. Again, just going to go to the clean step so you can see this data set. So this is a very common also problem if you're working with CSV or text files such that there's metadata rows in the first 2 or 3 rows. So this is something that you could see in like SAP standard exports. Census data has it a lot, where you'll have like a series of metadata and the data won't actually start till row 4 or row 5. And in Tableau, we have data interpreter, but sometimes it doesn't work and it doesn't work for CSVs in Tableau Prep. So we heard from a lot of users that they just want to be able to tell us like the data lives on row 4 or the header lives on row 4, the data starts on row 5. So we've built a new feature in the input step. You can see on the left-hand side, this new section allows you to directly tell Prep where your header lives. And so I know that my data starts on row 4, like I mentioned, or my header starts on row 4, so I can go ahead and just update that value here. Tableau Prep will automatically assume that the data starts in the row following. And you can see already when I look at the list view that these the schema looks a little bit more coherent than it did before, but let's just check in the clean step. Now I don't have to manually like rename each of my fields and have to filter out nulls. I can just tell Prep this is where the header lives. And yeah, this is a pretty exciting feature that we're excited for people to get their hands on. So that's the second feature. And then the last feature is the stratified sampling algorithm. So this is a batters data set. I think it just has information about different baseball teams and baseball stats. And this sampling algorithm, really quickly want to give a background on sampling for if anyone's not familiar. Tableau Prep brings in a subset of your data when you are authoring a flow. But when you run the flow, we run the flow with all of the data that you've connected to. So we want to make sure that you're having like a fast interactive experience, which is why we have sampling in the first place. That's why we say like if you can remove as many fields on the input step as possible, you can be like selective about your sampling. That'll make sure you have a faster experience. So today, if I choose to just do automatic sampling, this data set I think is small enough in that it can bring in all of the 83,000 rows. But let's just say I want to only look at 1,000 rows because it's loading slowly. So if I go back to my clean step, Tableau Prep will regenerate the sample, and now you can see the sampled badges telling me, hey, you're looking at a sampled set of the data set, and I'm only looking at 1,000 rows now. So I want you to note that here we have 81 teams in the data set, and I know that there are more than 81 teams that exist. And so this is where stratified sampling becomes really useful because I can tell Tableau Prep that I want to have at least one value for each unique distinct value in a specific field. So this is valuable if you have kind of a distribution that has a lot of a distribution that has a lot of distinct values, but maybe aren't all represented the same in terms of like the amount of distribution. So you have like a really small population. So in this scenario, you would be able to select stratified sampling, and I can go ahead and choose that I want to make sure that at least one of every team is included in the data set as I author. And I can go back to Tableau Prep's clean step. And now you can see that I have 137 teams in this data set. And you can even see with the mini map in the profile pane that the distribution is looking more uniform. They either have like 7 or 8 rows per team. And this is particularly useful if you've ever done a rows to column pivot, or you're just trying to have more control over the sampling as you're working with your data set in Tableau Prep. So yeah, those are the new features that are coming up. I hope the demo was useful in telling the story. I think I have maybe like one more slide. You already saw the demo. Like I mentioned, I'm on the prep team. Shiva, Ryan, Abhinav, and I are all working on prep. Feel free to reach out to any of us on LinkedIn or Tableau community forums. I think I have my email listed, but love meeting new people and chatting and hearing about prep use cases. So I hope that this was valuable for some folks. And if you're not using prep, try it out and let me know what you think. Thanks.
Thank you. Cool. I think we have a question in the chat. I just kind of loosely answered, but I think you probably would know better than me. But by Graham, he asked if you can use the running calc to start over for each month, year, etc.
Yes, you can. So I think probably the way that you would do that is to create a field that has the month for each row, and then you could partition on that field in the interface that I showed. Oh, sorry, I did not see any of these chats as I was presenting, which I feel so bad about. I'm glad to see some excitement about this. So yes, hopefully that answers your question, Graham. Yes, and Quinn said that exactly too. Yay.
Cool. Does anyone else have any questions? If not, yeah, I think I am closing it out on the Zoom here, but I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, if you guys have any questions or anything, I don't have the slide deck, so I do not have any of that, but we have the recording. Unfortunately, we missed the first presenter of the recording. So
I'm
yeah,
here,
and
Quinn, too. Yeah, we can wrap
there
it
you
up.
go.
I think. I apologize for the recording for the first session. I don't know if Derrell is still there, but I'm sorry I couldn't catch that speaker. I should have started it when I opened it up. But thanks everyone for being here, and it was lovely to connect with you. And thank you all the presenters. Thank you, Livy, for what you showed us for data prep. I am glad that the product is getting some love too. I'd love to see that. So thank you very much. And if you have any questions or anything, feel free to connect with us through the different channels we shared at the beginning of the session as well. And I will try to figure out what to do for the recording. I think Derrell had presented somewhere else, so maybe I can cut it and maybe paste it in and do something there. But we'll figure something out. But we'll share that with everyone that's subscribed once we have it ready. Thank you very much. Have a great day. Talk soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.